Welcome back to Mission of the Chosen. Today we uncover how silence became the stage for illusions, how truth finally breaks through, and why exposure always arrives at the most devastating moment. For years, your quiet has been misunderstood. They mistook patience for paralysis, humility for invisibility, silence for surrender. They didn't realize your silence was not weakness, it was strategy. It was the fuse before detonation. And when the fuse runs out, it doesn't whisper, it roars. That roar is here now. The moment they feared, the instant when their illusions collapse under the weight of your undeniable truth. Think about it. They built their influence not on talent, not on character, not on true strength, but on your restraint. Your silence was their crown. Your silence was their shield. They wore costumes of leader, hero, victim, savior roles they never earned, but they could only perform them because you allowed quiet to linger. Remove the silence, and suddenly the stage is stripped bare. Their roles dissolve, and the crowd sees them for what they always were, imposters trembling in borrowed light. Psychology proves this again and again. People trust the original source more than the echo. You are the source, and when the source finally speaks, every echo is reduced to background noise. That is what terrifies them most. Imagine someone stealing your voice, rehearsing it in private, then parading it on stage. They gather sympathy, they build alliances, they convince crowds that the sound belongs to them. And then you walk in, you clear your throat, and instantly every eye recognizes the truth. No more debate, no more acting, just silence from the thieves. That's what your presence has done. This is why the slip they tried to cover is so devastating. It wasn't a minor stumble, it was the universe pulling the rug out from under them. Timing is everything. And the universe knows how to strike at the exact moment when exposure hurts the most. That moment has arrived. Their empire was never built on truth. It was built on your restraint, and restraint always has a limit. Once lifted, it becomes revelation. They gambled on you staying silent forever, and that gamble just bankrupted them. Consider this. When someone hides a diamond in mud, the diamond does not lose its value, it waits. And when it is finally cleaned, it blinds every eye because it survived what was meant to destroy it. That's you. They buried you in gossip, shame, and silence. But the dirt has fallen away, and now the brilliance is too strong to ignore. The irony burns. They wanted you forgotten. Now you are unforgettable. They wanted you hidden. Now you're the headline. They wanted you ordinary. Now you stand extraordinary in front of those who tried to erase you. Their venom became your antidote. They poisoned rooms with whispers, but venom only thrives when the cure is absent. You became the cure the moment you stood as yourself, authentic, consistent, undeniable. Your very existence neutralized their toxins. And that's why they panic now. Their entire playbook has collapsed. Every rumor looks desperate. Every mask looks cracked. Every scheme looks childish in the light of reality. They're scrambling to hold up an empire made of wet paper, but paper doesn't stand against fire. The fire is here. What was meant to bury you has become your spotlight. What was meant to silence you has become your amplifier. What was meant to shame you has become the crown placed squarely on your head. Feel this in your chest right now, the rush of knowing the secret is out, that their whisper campaign has flipped into your coronation. If you sense that energy, drop 777 inches the comments. Not because it's a number, but because it's a confirmation that truth always finds its voice. Let me be clear, this is not just exposure, it's transformation. They underestimated you so deeply that it became their downfall. They thought time was on their side, but time was always working for you. And now, every scar they mocked has become your evidence. Every wound they laughed at has become your spotlight. Every attempt to erase you has made your presence even louder. The stage has shifted, the curtain has fallen, the mask is shattered, and as the dust settles, the world is left staring at you alive, unbroken, undeniable. The shadows they trusted are gone, the silence they depended on has turned against them, and the lies they rehearsed now taste bitter in their own mouths. You've stepped into the light, and there's no returning to the old script. This is where the story tilts forever, because the world has just seen what they tried hardest to hide. And once truth walks into the room, every eye stays fixed. They mocked what they couldn't understand. They laughed at your sketches, ridiculed your discipline, dismissed your dreams as too wild, too impossible, too far-fetched to survive in the real world. But mockery is always the cheapest form of defense. It doesn't cost effort, it doesn't demand courage, it's simply noise from those who cannot see. And while they laughed, you were building. While they pointed and jeered, you were drafting, laying stones, planting seeds in silence. To them, your work looked like scribbles on paper, meaningless lines and strange patterns. But to you, every line carried a future, every seed carried a harvest. That's the difference between a visionary and a mocker. Vision doesn't need applause. It doesn't even need recognition. It just needs persistence. Fast forward, and those very scribbles are now standing tall. Your blueprint became a framework too solid to be denied. The people who once ridiculed it now walk through it in awe, forgetting their laughter, pretending they always believed. They didn't, but results have a way of silencing mockery. Think of the architect unrolling plans before a crowd that can't read them. To the crowd, it looks like nonsense. To the architect, it is destiny. And when those plans become steel and glass scraping the sky, the laughter dies, replaced by awe. That's your story. They couldn't read the lines, but the future was always hidden inside them. Let's be clear, their laughter wasn't evidence of your failure, it was evidence of their blindness. People mock what threatens their comfort. People ridicule what reveals their lack of effort. Their laughter was never about you, it was about them. Psychology calls it projection. When people can't rise to your level, they attempt to pull you down to theirs. But all projection really does is spotlight insecurity. They mocked because they feared. They feared the clarity of your focus. They feared the depth of your resilience. They feared the steadiness of your steps. And here's the irony. While they mocked, they also copied. They sneered at your routines, but when no one was watching, they borrowed them. They ridiculed your originality, but they stole fragments of it to keep themselves afloat. They laughed loudly, but they mimicked quietly. Because mockery is free, but building costs everything. Let's imagine this. A thief breaks into a construction site, steals a handful of bricks, and then claims to own the whole building. That's how they treated your work. They thought being near you made them equal to you. They thought taking scraps from your discipline gave them ownership of your future. But ownership doesn't belong to the thief, it belongs to the architect. And the architect has always been you. This is why the laughter has stopped. The joke no longer lands. The results speak louder. The proof is undeniable. And the ones who once mocked are left scrambling for excuses, pretending they saw it coming all along. History won't remember their laughter. History will remember your design. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every decision you made when no one believed it wasn't wasted. It was laying the groundwork for a reality too strong to collapse. They thought you were dreaming, but you weren't dreaming. You were designing. They thought you were lost, but you weren't lost. You were leading. Imagine a painter at a canvas. Every stroke looks strange, incomplete. The crowd laughs at the emptiness, at the mess. But the painter continues, stroke after stroke, until suddenly the image emerges, undeniable and breathtaking. The same crowd that mocked now stands silent, captivated, forgetting their ridicule. That's what's happening now. The picture is finished. The mockery is irrelevant. Seeds work the same way. They are buried, dismissed as lifeless dirt. People laugh at the emptiness, not realizing that under the soil, roots are spreading, stems are pushing, life is forming. Then one day, a tree breaks through the ground, stretching toward the sun, unstoppable, undeniable, and those same people stand in its shade, pretending they never doubted. That's you, the tree that rose from laughter, the blueprint that outlasted ridicule, the painting that silenced mockery. And the ending they fear most is that their laughter is now proof of your power. Every insult is a receipt, every joke is evidence, every sneer is documentation of what you carried long before anyone else could see it. The very blueprint they tried to dismiss has become the foundation beneath their feet. They mocked the architect but forgot that nothing exists without the one who drew the plan. And now, the world sees who really built and who only mocked. The truth is simple. Results will always outlive ridicule. Vision will always outlast laughter. And those who laughed loudest will be the ones forced to walk in what they once called impossible. They thought the joke was on you, But history just proved the joke was always on them, and now, the silence of their laughter is the loudest sound in the room. The silence is broken, the curtain is torn, and what they never wanted revealed is now the only thing anyone can see. The evidence they tried to bury has become the very light that exposes them. They believed scars could be hidden, that wounds would erase you, that if they covered the truth with enough lies, time would do the rest. But scars don't fade when they're carved this deep. Scars testify. They speak without needing permission. And now, your scars are louder than their carefully rehearsed stories. Think about how the mind works. Human beings are wired to notice contradictions. When someone says, "This person is weak," but observers watch you endure storms that would have destroyed anyone else, they don't question your strength, they question the storyteller. That's the turning point they couldn't escape. Their credibility wasn't destroyed by your words, it collapsed under the weight of your survival. Picture a courtroom for a moment. One witness delivers a polished statement, rehearsed down to the syllable. But then undeniable evidence is laid on the table, photographs, documents, scars that prove otherwise. The entire jury shifts. The testimony is dismissed, not because someone argued against it, but because the truth made it irrelevant. That's the stage you're in. They tried to act like credible witnesses. Now they've been revealed as false. Every time they attempted to erase your story, they overlooked the permanence of endurance. The fact that you're still here is evidence enough. Every escape from sabotage, every betrayal you outlived, every dark night you refused to collapse under it all piled up into receipts they cannot explain away. You're not just surviving, you are the contradiction their narrative cannot survive. Imagine this. A tree split by lightning, charred and scarred, everyone expects it to topple. Yet year after year, it stands taller, roots deeper, branches wider. Do you need words to explain its resilience? The wound itself testifies. That's you. You've become a living monument to strength, and their whispers can't compete with living proof. The more they tried to cover you, the more the cracks in their story began to show. It's the same with a painting smeared over in dark paint. At first the colors beneath seem lost, but as the strokes dry, the original image bleeds through stronger than ever. They can't stop the truth from bleeding through. They can't hide the brilliance you carry because the canvas itself refuses to stay buried. Their fear now isn't just that you survived, it's that your survival unmasks them. They wanted the world to believe you were fragile, unstable, forgettable. But your persistence has made them look foolish, desperate, exposed. Their empire wasn't ruined by an external force, it was undone by their own lies colliding with the undeniable evidence of your endurance. And the more people see it, the more obvious it becomes. Their story doesn't line up, their narrative sounds brittle, their tone reeks of desperation. What once convinced others now rings hollow, because perception isn't fully theirs to control. People can see with their own eyes. They can sense the gap between rumor and reality, and once that awareness clicks, there's no going back. That's why their panic feels so frantic. Lies require constant energy to survive. They need maintenance, reinforcement, repetition. But truth stands without effort. It doesn't need to be rehearsed, it doesn't need to be defended. It carves itself into memory like stone, and your life is the stone no rumor could chip away. Every scar, every silent endurance, every impossible comeback has outlived their schemes. They thought ignoring your struggles would erase them, but those struggles became the very spotlight shining on their fraud. They thought burying your name would make it disappear, but every attempt to bury you turned you into seed. And seeds don't die underground, they rise. Here's what they'll never confess out loud. Your scars humiliate them, because for every mark you carry, they are reminded of a scheme that failed, a betrayal that didn't break you, a trap you escaped. Each scar is proof that their plans were powerless against you, and the more you show up alive, unbroken, undeniable, the more their shame grows. This is the sick irony. They spent years polishing their act, building illusions, constructing fragile stages of lies, and yet one undeniable scar on you has more credibility than their entire rehearsed empire. People can fake smiles, fake stories, fake applause, but no one can fake scars. That's why you don't have to shout to prove who you are. You don't need to argue or beg for belief. Simply existing, simply being visible, simply walking with scars that glow like metals that's enough to dismantle everything they built. Your presence is their exposure, your endurance is their undoing. They spent so long trying to convince others you were weak, but every eye that sees you standing now knows the truth. The weakness was never yours, it was theirs. Weakness is hiding behind lies. Weakness is panicking when truth shows up. Weakness is needing silence to survive. And now their weakness is glaring, undeniable, humiliating. They tried to bury you, but instead they buried themselves. Their schemes are the pit they fell into. Their rumors are the smoke that now suffocates them. Their desperation is the very proof of your significance. And no amount of scrambling can reverse what the world has already seen. This is the moment where scars flip into crowns, where evidence transforms into exposure, where every attempt to erase you backfires into the spotlight. They thought time would erase you, but time has only carved you deeper into history. They thought betrayal would silence you, but betrayal only sharpened your endurance. They thought lies would define you, but lies decay, and truth never does. And now, no one is asking whether you exist. No one doubts whether you survived. The only question left is how far your light will spread now that nothing stands in its way. The show is over, the act is exposed, and their whispers have lost their echo. The audience has already chosen what to believe, and they didn't choose the rehearsed lie. They chose the undeniable evidence that has been in front of them all along your life. The story has shifted forever, and this is the detail they can never undo. The scars they mocked have become the spotlight they cannot escape. The story doesn't pause here. The scars have already spoken, and now the weight of your rise presses down like an earthquake on the empire they built out of shadows. Their world is shrinking, and they can feel it in their bones. They only look tall because you were forced to kneel. That's the bitter truth they can't swallow. Their survival wasn't rooted in strength, it was propped up by illusion. If you stayed quiet, they could shout. If you stayed hidden, they could glow. If you stayed small, their lies could strut around, unchallenged. Their bigness was never real, it was borrowed. But cages break, silence ends, and when you finally stood, the entire foundation beneath them cracked. Their illusion of dominance collapsed because it could only exist as long as you carried the weight. The second you stopped carrying it, they fell flat. Picture the bully who puffs his chest only because he's standing on someone's back. He waves his arms, brags, demands respect. But when the one beneath him stands tall, the bully stumbles, landing face first in the dirt. That's what just happened. They weren't strong, they were balanced on your silence. And when you rose, they crumbled. Psychologists call this relative dominance, a fragile kind of power that exists only in contrast. They rehearsed their script until even they believed it. You're weak, you're nothing, you'll never make it. But those words only carried weight when you stayed in the corner. Once you stepped into the light, their shadow disappeared. And the exposure is brutal. Every inch you grow shrinks their entire stage. Every step forward makes their empire look smaller, pettier, more pathetic. Their entire strategy was never about building themselves up, it was about keeping you down. That's why your rise feels like an earthquake to them. You didn't just disrupt their system, you revealed its fragility. Here's the irony. They depended on your doubt more than they depended on their own effort. Your self-doubt was their oxygen, your hesitation was their safety, your silence was their shield. But oxygen runs out, silence breaks, doubt eventually dies, and when it did, their empire suffocated. Think of a shadow stretched across the ground at dusk. It looks long, enormous, intimidating, but the second the sun rises high, the shadow shrinks into nothing. That's your growth. You didn't need to fight them, you only needed to rise. And the very act of rising made their shadow disappear. Now they're scrambling. They don't know how to function without you being small. They don't know how to perform without you staying silent. Their entire identity was built on borrowed space. And when the light shifted, the space vanished. You need to understand something crucial. Their authority was never real. It was a costume stitched together from your restraint. And when restraint lifted, the costume ripped apart. What's left isn't impressive, it's embarrassing. Their stage props are collapsing, their lines sound fake, and their audience is already walking out. They thought you would kneel forever, but your rise has proven what was true all along. They were never giants. They were imposters, standing on fragile scaffolding, hoping no one would notice. And now, everyone notices. This is why your presence is so threatening to them. It isn't because you shouted louder or fought dirtier. It's because you no longer play the role they assigned. You refuse to shrink. You refuse to stay silent. You refuse to carry their illusion anymore. And without you propping them up, they collapse under their own emptiness. Let's take this further. Imagine a mirror shattered into pieces. For years, they used those fragments to reflect themselves bigger than they were. But one by one, those fragments are slipping away, and the reflection no longer makes sense. That's where they are now, staring into a broken mirror that refuses to flatter them. They don't want to admit it, but your growth has exposed the truth. Their power only worked as long as you stayed beneath it. Once you rose, they shrank, and no amount of pretending can change that. The empire that once looked so untouchable now looks like wet paper collapsing in the rain. Every false title they wore is sliding off. Every illusion they depended on is dissolving. And the worst part? The world is watching. There's no recovering from this. Once people see the contrast, they can't unsee it. They see who truly carried the weight. They see who stood tall. They see who only ever pretended. And the illusion is shattered forever. This is why your rise terrifies them. It's not just your presence, it's what your presence reveals. Your growth is a spotlight. It doesn't just illuminate you, it exposes their emptiness. And once emptiness is seen, it can't masquerade as greatness anymore. The truth is undeniable. They were never big. They only looked big because you were small. And now, their smallness has nowhere left to hide. So let them scramble, let them panic, let them try to claw back what's already gone. None of it matters, because the shadow has already vanished, and the sun is only climbing higher. Your rise is irreversible, their fall is inevitable, and the balance has shifted forever. The moment they feared most has come. The world now knows they were never standing tall. They were standing on you, and you finally walked away. The collapse didn't come from some outside force, it came from the weight of their own lies rotting from within. They rehearsed their lines, polished their illusions, and told themselves that repetition would make deception real. But lies have expiration dates. They sour, they decay, and they demand constant maintenance to survive. That's the trap they fell into. They built a system that could only function if they fed it every single day. Rumors don't last without reinforcement. Illusions don't stand without constant repair. Deceptions don't breathe without attention. They chained themselves to their own false empire, slaves to a performance that had to be perfected endlessly. Truth, on the other hand, doesn't rot. It doesn't need polish. It doesn't crumble with time. It stands like stone, steady and patient, waiting for the moment lies collapse under their own weight. And that's exactly what's happened. Think of a fruit coated in wax to make it look fresh, shiny on the outside but rotting within. At first, it fools the eye. But give it time, and the skin wrinkles, the smell seeps out, and the rot becomes undeniable. That's their story, glossy on the surface, hollow underneath. Meanwhile, truth is a diamond. It doesn't need coating, it doesn't spoil, it doesn't weaken with age. Place it beside the rotten fruit, and the contrast speaks for itself. This is why their empire feels so brittle now. People have noticed the cracks. The smooth rehearsals now sound too forced, too polished, too fake. The pattern doesn't add up anymore. And the human brain is built to catch those inconsistencies. Once people spot them, trust dissolves. And once trust dissolves, nothing can glue it back together. You've been the silent stone beneath it all. You didn't have to fight their stories. You only had to endure. Because truth doesn't fight for survival, it simply waits. And in waiting, it outlasts every fabrication. Their greatest mistake was believing lies could outlive truth. That if they repeated the narrative long enough, people would believe it forever. But forever doesn't exist for deception. Eventually, the curtain always falls. The actors are revealed, and the audience realizes they've been watching a performance, not reality. That's what's happening now. Their credibility is gone. Their rehearsed act has turned to rubble, and the light of truth, steady and unbothered, now shines without resistance. Imagine them pouring energy into a dam built to hold back the ocean. For a time, it works. People believe in its strength. But the water keeps pressing, relentless, powerful, patient. And eventually the cracks spread, the walls give way, and the flood sweeps through. They thought they could hold back truth forever. But truth is the ocean, and their lies were only the dam. Now their stage has collapsed, their costumes shredded, their masks unwearable. The very effort to maintain the illusion has drained them, leaving them exposed and exhausted. And in that exhaustion, the truth rose effortlessly. You never needed to shout. You never needed to beg for belief. All you had to do was endure. Endurance is the enemy of lies, because endurance reveals what is permanent, and permanence is what lies can never imitate. So here they stand now, not in glory, but in shame, not as masters of the narrative, but as prisoners of their own performance. Their empire was never built on stone. It was built on borrowed silence, and silence doesn't last forever. The rotten fruit has finally been split open. The smell is undeniable, and no one can pretend anymore. Their credibility has collapsed, their narrative has expired, their empire is ash, and you, steady, patient, undeniable, are still here. That's the contrast no lie can erase. That's the permanence no illusion can fake. That's the truth they can't survive. The lies have already died, and the truth is still standing. And now, the world isn't asking whether the truth exists. The world is asking how it ever believed the lie in the first place. They thought they had you figured out. They studied your wounds like equations, measured your losses like statistics, and calculated your silence like it was the final variable in their formula. To them, it was simple math. Pressure equals collapse. Rumors equal ruin. Silence equals disappearance. But they were wrong. They mistook you for a problem to be solved, forgetting that not everything can be reduced to numbers on a chalkboard. What they couldn't see was the force carrying you beyond their reach. They counted what they could measure, but they ignored what they couldn't touch. And what they couldn't touch was the very thing keeping you alive. They thought your strength was your foundation, so they targeted it. They thought your resources defined you, so they stripped them away. They thought your silence meant surrender, so they mocked it. But resilience doesn't come from what they see, it comes from what they cannot grasp. Picture a boxer in the ring. He's been hit hard, bloodied, breathing heavy. The opponent believes it's over. But then, against all logic, the boxer rises. His eyes burn, his fists tighten, and suddenly he strikes with power that defies reason. That's what you've done. They thought you were finished. But what fuels you isn't measurable, and it isn't theirs to take. Psychologists have a name for their mistake: underestimating resilience. When people calculate outcomes, they weigh time, energy, money, the visible factors, but they forget the hidden ones: willpower, adaptability, unshakable purpose. These are the variables that don't fit neatly into an equation, and yet they decide everything. They underestimated all of them in you. Every attack, every sabotage, every scheme they designed to strip you down became an invitation for something greater to rise through you. What they meant for collapse became fuel. What they intended for silence became a sharpening. What they assumed would end you became the stage for your renewal. This is why their blueprint collapsed. They planned for your downfall, but their plan was flawed from the start, because they never accounted for the unseen. They never accounted for the fact that the harder they pressed, the stronger your comeback would be. Imagine them building a tower of equations on a chalkboard, each one neat and logical, designed to predict your end. But then a single variable they ignored flips the entire equation upside down. Their math no longer works. Their certainty becomes confusion. That's where they stand now, staring at ruins they can't explain. And here's the truth. Your survival wasn't luck. Your rise wasn't coincidence. Your exposure wasn't chance. It was inevitable. Not because you had more resources, but because what fueled you was beyond calculation. They thought you were running on human fuel alone. They never considered that purpose itself is a power source. That conviction itself is energy. That silence isn't emptiness, it's preparation. Every setback they engineered became proof that their formula was flawed. Every rumor they spread became evidence of their desperation. Every trap they set became testimony that they were terrified of the one variable they couldn't solve: you. And when their perfect equation broke apart, the collapse was absolute. There's no revising the formula now. There's no pretending they didn't miss the most important factor. They gambled everything on a false calculation, and the house of cards fell in one breath. Now their empire looks like math scribbled on a broken chalkboard, useless, irrelevant, mocked by its own failure. And your presence is the proof that they never held the answers. They wanted logic to dictate your end. But what carried you was not logic. It was inevitability. And inevitability can't be stopped, can't be measured, can't be erased. That's why their fear feels so frantic now. They don't just fear your endurance, they fear what it represents. Proof that no equation they design, no trap they build, no story they invent can account for what is beyond their control. You've outlived their logic, you've shattered their calculations, you've dismantled their certainty. And now, as they stare at you standing, thriving, undeniable, they are forced to accept the one thing they never wanted to face. You were never standing alone to begin with. Their formulas failed because they left out the truth. And the truth has already won. They tried to bury you in whispers, hoping the dirt would smother your name. They spread rumors like seeds of poison, convinced that if they poured enough shadows over you, the light would fade. But here's the irony that keeps them up at night. Every ounce of dirt they threw became soil. And soil doesn't bury seeds. Soil makes them grow. Every insult was supposed to stain your reputation. Every rumor was supposed to fracture your influence. Every whisper was meant to bend perception in their favor. But the harder they tried to paint you as broken, the more people started asking, why this person? Why so much effort to erase them? That curiosity was their undoing. Because curiosity leads to investigation, and investigation uncovers truth. People started looking closer, and what did they see? They didn't see someone defeated. They saw resilience that shouldn't exist. They saw strength that survived sabotage. They saw consistency that lies couldn't destroy. The very things your enemies tried to hide became impossible to ignore. Think of a painter splashing black paint over a masterpiece, laughing as if the colors underneath were gone forever. But when the paint dries, the brilliance bleeds through, stronger, bolder, undeniable. That's what happened with you. The more they smeared, the more your colors emerged, the more they covered, the more your truth revealed itself. And here's what crushes them. Lies depend on constant repetition. They have to be told again and again, or else they fade. But truth doesn't need repetition. Truth only needs to exist once, and once it's seen, it can't be unseen. That's why their campaign failed. Their whispers demanded energy they couldn't sustain. Your reality demanded nothing but endurance. Your very existence became the contradiction that destroyed their script. They said you were unstable, but people saw your consistency. They said you were finished, but people saw your growth. They said you were forgotten, but your name wouldn't stop echoing in rooms they tried to keep you out of. It's the paradox of reputation. They thought perception was power, but perception without proof is nothing more than smoke, and smoke always clears. Proof is what lasts, and proof has been walking in your skin the whole time. Imagine a courtroom again. A false witness insists on their story, voice trembling, words rehearsed. But then, the real evidence is wheeled in, undeniable, permanent. The jury doesn't just dismiss the false testimony, they turn on the liar. That's what's happening right now. Their desperate accusations only spotlight your strength. And the world has noticed. People are connecting dots. They see who carried scars without collapsing. They see who endured betrayal without bitterness. They see who kept walking when sabotage was supposed to stop them. And those observations are louder than every whisper your enemies ever rehearsed. Now the whispers don't sound like truth, they sound like obsession. They sound like desperation. They sound like fear, disguised as gossip. And every time someone hears their smear, they wonder, what is it about this person that makes you so afraid? That unspoken question burns them from the inside out. They thought burying your name would erase you. Instead, it amplified you. They thought silence would erase your story. Instead, it echoed louder than their noise. They thought covering you with lies would blind the world. Instead, the cover-up became the clearest sign of your significance. The truth is simple. They never attacked you because you were weak. They attacked you because you were too strong to ignore. And in attacking you, they revealed you. Their envy became the billboard of your worth. Their obsession became the advertisement of your importance. And now they can't reverse it. They can't put the soil back over the seed. They can't silence the echo once it's begun. They can't erase the curiosity they accidentally provoked. You are no longer the buried seed, you are the tree they never wanted to grow. And that tree is casting a shadow over everything they built. Every attempt to bury you has become proof of your resilience. Every whisper has become an echo they can't contain. Every scheme has backfired into exposure. They wanted you silenced. Instead, your name is louder than ever, and the echo will not stop. They swore someone like you could never exist. They told the world that integrity this steady, resilience this unshakable, vision this relentless was only myth. A bedtime story, a fantasy meant to inspire the naive. Because if they convinced everyone that people like you weren't real, then no one would look too closely at the cracks in their own lives. But then you showed up, and suddenly, their shield of impossibility shattered. You became the living contradiction of everything they preached. They built safety in declaring you impossible. But impossibility doesn't hold when the proof is standing, breathing, undeniable. Imagine a crowd mocking the idea of fire breathing, calling it fairy tale, laughing at the very thought, and then, right before their eyes, flames erupt. No one is laughing anymore. That's the shock they felt the moment you refused to break. Every time you endured betrayal without folding, every time you carried yourself with vision when chaos tried to blind you, every time you walked forward when collapse seemed certain, you tore their narrative to pieces. You didn't argue, you didn't beg for belief, you simply existed. And existence is stronger than explanation. Here's the reality that cuts them deepest. People don't need theories when they have living proof. And that's what you are. You are the proof that resilience is real, that integrity survives, that endurance produces strength. You are the evidence they hoped would never appear. Their panic is rooted in shame, because your presence does more than expose their lies, it exposes their choices. If resilience is possible, why did they choose weakness? If integrity is possible, why did they choose shortcuts? If vision is possible, why did they settle for corruption? Your existence doesn't just unmask them, it indicts them. That's why they were desperate to brand you as impossible. If people believed you couldn't exist, then no one would expect more of them. No one would demand higher standards. No one would see the gap between what they are and what they could be. You being real means their excuses have expired. The pattern is clear now. Where collapse should have happened, there was strength. Where compromise should have lived, there was truth. Where defeat should have silenced you, there was survival. Every place they pointed to as proof that you would fall became the stage where you stood taller. And now, they can't outrun the contradiction. Imagine a legend etched in stone. People say it's only a story, that no one like this ever walked the earth. But then, the very figure in the legend steps into the room. Suddenly, the myth is flesh, the story is alive, and denial becomes impossible. That's you. You didn't need their permission to exist. You didn't need their belief to rise. You didn't need their validation to become undeniable. Your reality is the living rebuke to their lies, and no matter how they scramble, they can't erase what's standing in front of them. And now, the world sees it too. The excuses no longer make sense. The denial no longer convinces. The shield of impossible has shattered, and what's left is the truth they feared most. Someone like you was real all along. This is why your presence is so haunting for them. It's not just about who you are, it's about what you prove. You prove that the path they avoided was possible. You prove that the standards they mocked were achievable. You prove that greatness they dismissed was attainable, and every step you take is a reminder of their failure to choose the higher road. Your existence became the storm they couldn't contain, not because you shouted, not because you forced belief, but because reality can't be argued away. You exist, and that is enough. The myth is alive, the story is breathing, the legend is undeniable. And now, every time they hear your name, they don't just remember the lie they told, they feel the weight of the truth they tried hardest to deny. They said you couldn't exist, but here you are, and nothing terrifies them more than that. Envy is nothing but admiration twisted into disguise. That's the irony they can't wash off. Every ounce of hate they hurled at you was just proof of how much they couldn't stop watching. Their obsession has become the loudest billboard of your worth. If you were insignificant, would they have wasted this much energy? If you were ordinary, Would they have invested years trying to erase you? Shadows don't attract attacks. Ghosts don't inspire smear campaigns. The only reason you were targeted is because your very presence burned through their illusions. They poured their energy into discrediting you, but look at what that really means. No one builds campaigns against the irrelevant. No one organizes to erase the unnoticed. Their attacks weren't random, they were targeted proof that you mattered more than they could handle. Imagine a spotlight in a dark room. Nobody throws stones at shadows, they throw them at the light. That's why you were attacked. Every rumor, every smear, every attempt to twist your name wasn't proof of weakness. It was proof that you carried a light their darkness couldn't compete with. And here's the sting they can't escape. Their envy became your resume. Every jab they made, every rumor they spread, every smear they orchestrated became free advertising for your influence. People watched their desperation and thought, who is this person that makes you this afraid? That question alone exposed the truth they feared you because you mattered. Envy is a confession, and they confessed with every word. They revealed your impact every time they obsessed. They wrote your significance in their own handwriting with every smear. The world didn't need to hear your case, your enemies made it for you. Think of wolves circling a single target in the herd. What does that signal? Not weakness, but importance. The wolves expose the strength of the one they're after. In the same way, their focus on you has told the world exactly who you are. They wanted to erase you. Instead, they highlighted you. They wanted you invisible. Instead, they made you unforgettable. They wanted you ordinary. Instead, they made you extraordinary in the eyes of those watching. The irony is brutal. Their jealousy has become the megaphone of your significance. They shouted against you so loudly that they made sure everyone heard your name. They poured their energy into silencing you, but their noise only amplified your presence. This is the exposure they can't undo. People see the pattern. They see the desperation in your enemy's actions. They see that no one spends this much effort on someone who doesn't matter. And now, the conclusion is obvious. You've always mattered more than they wanted to admit. Their envy has backfired. It doesn't weaken you, it strengthens your credibility. It doesn't erase you, it cements you. It doesn't hide you, it pushes you further into the spotlight. And now they live with the torment of their own obsession. Every time they speak against you, they promote you. Every time they fixate on you, they advertise your worth. Every attempt to bring you down becomes a stage that raises you higher. That's the curse of envy. It cannot stay silent. It exposes itself every time it speaks, and in exposing itself, it exposes the greatness it's trying to deny. They thought envy would poison you. Instead, it poisoned them. They thought jealousy would erase you. Instead, it carved your name deeper into memory. They thought their obsession would bury you. Instead, it revealed you as unforgettable. Now their envy is no longer a weapon, it's evidence. It testifies louder than any praise could. It screams what they can't admit, that you are a force too strong to ignore. They can't undo that confession. They can't silence the proof. They can't erase the billboard they painted with their own hands. And every time they try, the billboard only grows brighter. They thought their words could poison you. They stirred rumors like toxins, whispered suspicions like venom in the dark, and poured doubt into every ear they could reach. To them, it was chemistry. Mix enough lies with repetition, and eventually suspicion would become truth. They imagined that the venom would spread quietly, weakening everything in its path until your name itself felt dangerous. But venom always exposes itself when the cure arrives, and you, without even trying, became the cure they could never contain. Your presence alone unraveled their formula. You didn't need to shout to cancel their toxins. You didn't need to argue to dissolve their poison. You simply existed, authentic, consistent, undeniable, and suddenly the venom they labored to create tasted hollow. Their entire concoction collapsed the moment people experienced the reality of you. Picture a village told the well is poisoned. Fear spreads. People avoid the water. Panic brews. Then someone drinks from the well, steady, unshaken, and nothing happens. Suddenly the spell is broken. Fear vanishes. That's what happened the moment people came close to you, the moment they saw for themselves what was real. The poison lost its grip. This is why their desperation sounds so frantic now. Lies weaken when examined. Rumors dissolve when tested. Venom only works when the cure is hidden, but once truth is visible, poison turns pathetic. The more they spread, the more they expose themselves, because each new rumor demanded more energy, more invention, more rehearsal. And eventually, people started noticing the pattern. Why so many attacks against one person? Why so much effort to silence one voice? And in that question, their mask slipped. The cure doesn't need explanation. It proves itself in action. Your consistency became the antidote. Your survival became the evidence. Your endurance became the medicine. Every false story they fed into the air collapsed under the weight of your steady reality. And now they live in the aftermath of their own experiment. The venom they poured has poisoned only themselves. Their lies corroded their credibility. Their rumors eroded their alliances. Their poison seeped into their own foundation until it cracked beneath them. The shift is undeniable. Where fear once lingered, clarity now grows. Where suspicion once echoed, confidence has replaced it. Where their venom once infected, your presence has purified. This is what devastates them. You didn't just survive their poison. You exposed their desperation. You revealed their contamination. You showed that the danger was never you. It was always them. The irony is sharp. They worked to brand you as toxic, but every attempt only spotlighted their own corruption. They wanted others to see you as a threat, but their obsession made it clear that you were the one carrying the cure, the one they couldn't replicate, the one they couldn't stop. Think of a storm sweeping through, dark and violent, determined to destroy. But when the sky clears, the only thing left standing is stronger, brighter, more grounded than before. That's you. The venom was temporary. The truth is permanent. And now, the audience has shifted sides. No one fears the poison anymore. They see it for what it is: desperate, hollow, decayed. And every eye that once hesitated now looks at you with clarity, realizing that your survival was never an accident. It was the inevitable collapse of their lie. They wanted the poison to define you. Instead, it defined them. They wanted their venom to end you. Instead, it became the proof of your power. The cure has arrived, and it's walking in your skin. And there's no venom left strong enough to contain it. They never played fair. From the very beginning, they stacked the deck, loaded the dice, and rigged the entire game so the outcome would always tilt against you. It was never about skill. It was never about merit. It was about control, forcing you into a role where every path led to failure. They designed the stage to collapse under your feet. Every obstacle, every false witness, every twisted rule was part of their casino, where the house always wins. At least, that's what they told themselves. They thought if they fixed the scoreboard, the result was sealed. They thought destiny could be scripted by their manipulation. But they underestimated you. You weren't bound to their crooked system. You didn't rise by their rules. While they were busy fixing the board, you were mastering the game itself. Every trap they laid became a lesson. Every crooked move they played became a map of their desperation. Every attempt to corner you only revealed their weak spots. And here's the irony: they created the arena to destroy you, but by studying it, you dismantled their system from within. You didn't just survive their rigged game, you turned their cheats into confessions. Picture a referee blowing the whistle, calling fouls that only favor one side. For a while, the crowd believes, but then the replay screen flashes the truth. Suddenly, no one respects the referee anymore. That's what exposure has done to them. Their role as judge is gone. Their mask as authority has collapsed. And now the audience sees what they really were: frauds holding whistles they never deserved. They spent years rehearsing their act. They thought if they called you a failure often enough, the crowd would believe it. But when the curtain fell, the reality was impossible to deny. The cheaters lost. The liar was caught red-handed, and the one they tried to sabotage became the standard by which the game is now judged. Because you became more than a player, you became the rulebook they can't escape. You became the judge whose presence exposes every trick. Their cheats no longer work because the truth is now the scoreboard, and truth doesn't bend. Think of a deck of cards, rigged and glued together, ready to fool anyone who plays. But then the cards are dropped, scattering across the floor, revealing every mark, every cheat. There's no covering it, no resetting the game. Once the illusion breaks, the con collapses forever. That's what happened. Their tricks are visible, their system is exposed, Their empire of rigged outcomes has gone up in flames, and now the authority has shifted into your hands. You no longer play by their script. You no longer bend to their dice. You no longer live under their scoreboard. You rewrote the entire game by simply standing in your truth. Here's the part that burns them most: they can't undo it. Once exposure hits, there's no crawling back into the shadows. Once the audience sees the replay, they never forget. Their credibility is gone for good, and no new performance can cover that. You didn't just win, you became the judge. And now, every move they make, every scheme they attempt, is measured against the reality of your survival, and in that comparison, they lose every time. Their game is over, their rules are irrelevant, their scoreboard is broken, and the world knows it. They convince themselves truth could be locked away like a prisoner, that if they built walls high enough, rehearsed their lines often enough, and kept fear standing guard, reality would never escape. To them, lies were the keys, manipulation was the lock, and silence was the door that would never open. But truth doesn't wait for permission. Truth doesn't knock. Truth doesn't bow. When its moment comes, it breaks in, uninvited, and dismantles everything in its path. For years, they labored like stage actors, perfecting illusions, polishing stories, and presenting their empire as flawless. They thought the performance could last forever. They thought as long as they controlled perception, no one would ever question the script. But lies are fragile plays. They demand energy, they demand precision. And eventually, exhaustion cracks the act wide open. And when the curtain fell, truth walked in, not timid, not apologetic, just undeniable. Imagine building a dam to hold back the ocean. For a season, it looks strong. People marvel at it, believe in it, trust it. But the ocean doesn't ask for permission to rise. It swells, it pushes, it roars until the wall bursts like glass. That's truth. And their dam of deception just collapsed under the pressure. Now the flood has swept through. Every hidden scheme, every rehearsed story, every carefully curated mask lies shattered in the debris. And here you stand unmoved, undeniable, revealed in the very moment they thought would never arrive. What they never understood is that people eventually feel the weight of inconsistencies. The mind is designed to recognize when stories don't line up, when actions contradict words, when the script feels too polished to be real. And that's why their empire fell. It wasn't destroyed by your shouting, it was destroyed by the audience, seeing the cracks for themselves. They thought truth needed defenders, but truth defends itself simply by existing. It didn't need to argue, it didn't need to fight. All it had to do was show up, and their illusion disintegrated. Now their greatest fear has come to life. They don't just look corrupt, they look foolish. They don't just appear exposed, they appear small. The authority they clung to has dissolved. The control they obsessed over has evaporated. And the cruelest irony? They weren't just underestimating you, they were underestimating the very nature of truth itself. They thought truth was fragile, that it required their permission to stand. But truth doesn't need consent. It doesn't wait for the gatekeepers. It arrives in its own timing, sweeping through every barrier like fire through dry grass. Their mistake wasn't only thinking they could bury you, it was believing reality could be rewritten forever. That repetition could replace authenticity. That performance could outlast permanence. But reality doesn't expire. It doesn't bow to illusion. It waits, and then it erupts. Now there's no debate left. Their lies are rubble. Their empire is ash. Their reputation is scarred beyond repair. And you've become the undeniable proof, standing tall in the wreckage. Every guard they posted at the door of truth has abandoned post. Every wall they built has collapsed. Every script they rehearsed has turned into a joke. What they swore would remain hidden forever is glaring in the daylight. And the world has already made its choice. They no longer believe the performance. They believe the evidence. They believe the scars. They believe the consistency. They believe you. Their final gamble has failed, because truth doesn't knock, truth breaks in, and it just burned their empire to the ground. They were certain they could keep you small forever, certain that their network of lies, their twisted alliances, their years of suppression would be enough to lock you out of the light. But what they didn't realize is that the more they fought to erase you, the more they revealed you. Their desperation became the very evidence of your significance, and now there is no going back. Every smear they launched became free publicity. Every rumor they spread became another receipt. Every whispered attack turned into an echo they couldn't silence. They thought the world would believe them forever. Instead, the world turned, asking the one question they could never afford. Why are you so obsessed with this person? That single question dismantled their empire, because the answer was unavoidable. They weren't fighting against someone irrelevant, they were fighting against the one they could never control. And now, their envy is carved into history. It has betrayed them, it has testified against them, it has exposed the reality that their entire stage existed only in opposition to your light. Without you, they had nothing. Without your silence, they had no shield. Without your restraint, they had no crown. You were the foundation they stood on, and when you rose, their kingdom collapsed in flames. Look at the shift. Once, they looked like giants and you looked invisible. Now, they are shrinking shadows, and you are the figure standing in undeniable clarity. Once, they dictated the story. Now, their story is rubble, and your truth is the headline. Once, they tried to make you ordinary. Now, you are extraordinary in the eyes of everyone who watched their empire implode. Their fall isn't private, it's public. Their mask didn't slip quietly, it shattered in front of the entire crowd. The people who once echoed their lies now whisper about their downfall. The allies they thought were loyal now hesitate to be seen near them. Their empire wasn't conquered, it self-destructed under the weight of exposure. And the irony stings like acid. They built their identity around erasing you, but in doing so, they immortalized you. They wanted you forgotten, but now you are unforgettable. They wanted you buried, but now you are undeniable. They wanted you erased, but now you are engraved deeper than ever. This is why their shame runs so deep. Because they didn't just fail, they advertised their failure with every desperate attempt to erase you. They can't undo it. They can't stuff the truth back into silence. Once daylight comes, shadows can't crawl back. Once truth is revealed, lies can't reclaim the throne. And here's what matters most. You didn't just survive them. You rose because of them. Their betrayal became your fuel. Their envy became your spotlight. Their venom became your medicine. Their attempts to erase you became the very proof of your permanence. So stand tall now, because you've walked through the fire and didn't burn. You've endured the lies and outlived them. You've carried scars that became crowns. You've been underestimated, miscalculated, mocked, and attacked, yet here you are, undeniable, unstoppable, unforgettable. They played the game too long, and the universe flipped the board in their faces. The empire they built on shadows has crumbled. And you're still standing, brighter, stronger, realer than ever. This isn't just survival, it's coronation. This isn't just endurance, it's vindication. This isn't just exposure, it's proof that no smear campaign, no rumor mill, no empire of lies can bury what was chosen to rise. So let the whispers die out, let the lies rot, let their envy consume them. Because your story has already moved beyond their reach, and the world has already seen too much to ever forget again. The curtain has fallen, the stage has cleared, the truth is standing in the spotlight, and it has your name written across it. And this time, the light doesn't dim,